Humanity had always believed it could conquer everything, from the deepest oceans to the farthest stars. Cities sprawled across continents. Machines pumped smoke into the skies, and oceans were riddled with plastic and chemicals. The forests, once green and wild, now bore scars of chainsaws and fire. Yet no one imagined the planet itself had a limit. That day began like any other, but the sky wore a strange hue, a sickly green light that flickered across the horizon. Birds fell from the air, their wings snapping mid-flight, and oceans roared as if in pain. Scientists scrambled to explain the phenomenon, calling it atmospheric turbulence or rare solar interference, but their instruments showed nothing normal. Satellites failed in waves, communications went dark, and the ground trembled with a pulse that felt alive, as if the earth itself had taken a breath and decided to retaliate. Cities that were once thought invincible crumbled under earthquakes so sudden they had no warning. Bridges twisted like metal ribbons. Skyscrapers fell in cascading avalanches, and rivers boiled as geothermal vents erupted. Without notice, humanity's arrogance met the wrath it had ignored for centuries. Governments tried to mobilize, but no army could fight the ground beneath their feet. Nuclear arsenals were launched in a panicked attempt at defense. Yet even the skies betrayed them, missiles veering off course into the abyss. The Earth was not just responding, it was striking with precision, as if every act of human destruction had been recorded and catalogued. Entire nations vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving behind only echoes and ash. Survivors huddled in underground bunkers, staring at monitors that offered no hope. The ocean sent tsunamis taller than mountains, swallowing coastlines whole, and hurricanes tore through lands with unprecedented fury. The world had become a hunting ground, with nature as the predator. Cities were reduced to sand and rubble. Forests erupted into wildfire storms, and deserts expanded as if trying to reclaim what had been stolen. Humans realized, too late, that their weapons were trivial, mere toys in comparison to the force they had awakened. And yet, in the chaos, small pockets of resistance formed. People who refused to surrender to despair, scavenging for food, water, and answers. Among them was Dr. Alina Varga, a climatologist who had warned governments for decades. Her research on planetary feedback loops was dismissed as alarmist, but now, her warnings had become the survival guide. Earth is alive, she muttered to herself in a bunker, lit by flickering emergency lights. And it's angry. The planet's retaliation was relentless. Earthquakes ripping tunnels apart, toxic clouds seeping through ventilation shafts, leaving survivors to choke in darkness. But some humans refused to die quietly, venturing out in armored vehicles to rescue others, mapping safe zones, and recording the fury around them. In her heart, Alina knew this was more than destruction. This was a message to humanity that life could not be bought, harvested, or polluted, without consequence. The world had awakened, and there was no mercy. Weeks passed, and the remnants of humanity clung to life in scattered enclaves. Cities were gone, replaced by landscapes that seemed alien, twisted by earthquakes, floods, and firestorms. Alina led a small group of survivors through forests that had begun reclaiming urban ruins. Trees grew through collapsed highways, vines, strangled metal, and wildlife, emboldened by the absence of humans, prowled freely. The air smelled sharp, metallic, and alive, carrying whispers of destruction. The survivors learned quickly that the Earth's attacks were not random. They had to move constantly, or the ground beneath them would betray them. Flash floods surged without warning. Earthquakes split safe havens in half, and lightning storms struck like precision weapons. Their journey became a test of ingenuity and courage, scavenging abandoned buildings for tools, rationing supplies, and creating shelters from the ruins. Alina discovered that some regions were safer than others, particularly places with natural barriers, mountains, and underground caves. But safety was temporary, never permanent. Among the survivors was Malik, a former engineer with a keen understanding of mechanics. He modified vehicles to withstand floods and earthquakes, turning them into rolling fortresses. The group also included Terra, a former teacher whose calm voice kept panic from spreading, and twins Jace and Kira, teenagers whose energy was both reckless and essential for morale. They traversed a world that was no longer recognizable, encountering rivers of molten rock, forests burning in eternal flames, and skies streaked with green fire. As they moved, they witnessed Earth reclaiming its dominion, forests growing at impossible speeds, roots breaking through concrete, animals attacking in coordinated patterns. It was as if the planet itself had developed intelligence. The survivors realized that staying in one place too long invited death. Yet, even in despair, moments of human resilience shone through. A newborn was delivered in a makeshift cave, laughter echoing amidst the chaos. The small victories became fuel for hope, even as the world fought to extinguish it. Elena studied the patterns, noting how lands that were overexploited seemed to suffer the most intense punishment. The ocean raged against overfished coasts. Deserts expanded over depleted lands. Glaciers surged unpredictably, crushing habitats. Humanity had learned nothing, and now it was paying the ultimate price. Earth isn't just punishing us, Elena said during one night around a flickering fire. It's teaching us what we've ignored for centuries. Malik nodded, staring at the flames. And if we don't learn, there won't be anyone left to remember. Nights were the hardest. As eerie sounds echoed through the ruins, strange roars and groans that sounded like the planet itself moving. The group pressed onward, knowing that each day survive was a victory, and that even in this apocalypse, humanity had to remember, adapt, and endure. Months turned into a year, and the survivors learned to fight differently, not with guns or bombs, but with knowledge, adaptability, and cooperation. Elena's team became a nucleus for other survivors, sharing strategies, medical knowledge, and survival skills. They discovered safe zones deep underground, natural caves, and even some islands barely touched by Earth's fury. People learned to read the planet's signals. Recognizing the early tremors, cloud patterns, and water surges, the Earth seemed to communicate with them, testing their intelligence and punishing mistakes. Malik developed rudimentary shelters that could shift or float in response to floods, while Ciro taught basic survival skills to children, preparing the next generation for a world that would never return to normal. Jace and Kira became scouts, mapping safe routes through forests that moved like living entities. The survivors also encountered strange anomalies, plants with predatory instincts, rivers that shifted overnight, and clouds that released deadly acids selectively. Some believed the planet had evolved in response to humanity. Others thought it was divine retribution. Yet amidst the chaos, bonds strengthened, humanity adapted, proving that life itself was a force difficult to eradicate. Elena kept meticulous records, hoping that someday, if the world healed, humans could learn from their mistakes. They began experimenting with controlled cultivation of crops, learning which plants thrived and which were rejected by the earth. Small triumphs that reminded them that survival was possible. However, not all humans had adapted ethically. Some resorted to raiding and violence, clinging to old patterns that the earth punished swiftly. Entire groups vanished overnight, their camps swallowed by landslides or sudden sinkholes. Humanity's arrogance had been replaced by humility, but not universally, and the conflict between survivors mirrored the larger struggle against the planet itself. Elena realized that true survival required more than strength. It required respect, understanding, and harmony. For the first time, humans began listening to the planet, observing its rhythms, and acting with restraint. The world had become a teacher, merciless yet instructive. For those who learned, life persisted, fragile, but defiant, and in the heart of the apocalypse, hope began to glimmer, not as denial, but as the quiet determination to coexist with a planet that demanded reverence. Even as survivors adapted, Earth's wrath continued. The planet did not forgive, and each human mistake brought immediate consequences. Forests would shift to block paths, rivers would swell to crush settlements, and winds ripped apart structures built eventually. Elena's group faced one of the harshest trials when a massive quake split their main cave sanctuary, forcing them to flee into open terrain. The ground beneath them buckled and cracked, swallowing vehicles and equipment, yet survival instincts took over. Humans using speed, ingenuity, and teamwork to evade death. Malik constructed temporary bridges from fallen debris, while Jace and Kira scouted for safe passage. Ciro kept high, soothing fear with stories and songs. The journey became a desperate race, where every misstep could trigger the Earth's fury. They learned to read the environment as a battlefield, recognizing unstable rocks, changing wind currents, and sudden water movements as signs of impending danger. The Earth seemed to punish recklessness instantly, but rewarded caution and insight. Humanity's tools were no longer weapons. They were extensions of observation, communication, and survival. Elena realized that the planet's attacks were selective, almost intelligent, targeting concentration of human activity.